Hey, welcome back to Careers and Coffee Talk. I'm your host, Laura, and today's episode is a must listen for anyone working at the intersection of leadership, resilience, and emerging technology. My guest today is Tom Sivak, a nationally respected emergency manager who's led during everything from the Super Bowl to a train derailment to the pandemic. He served at every level, local, state, federal, and most recently as FEMA's Region 5 administrator. Now, he's taking on a bold new frontier, artificial intelligence. As Chief Emergency Manager at EM1, Tom is leading efforts to integrate AI into emergency management in ways that are practical, scalable, and always people first. In this episode, we talk about how crisis leadership starts with relationships, not response plans, why presence is the mission, and how AI can give emergency managers something that they desperately need: time. We even talk about how to get curious and not intimidated about this technology shift. So, whether you're a seasoned emergency manager or just AI curious, grab your coffee and settle in. Let's get into it. So, Tom Sivak, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thanks a lot for having me today.
Of course, yeah. So, I want to jump right in, but you are on Careers and Coffee Talk. So, we got to start with you got your coffee?
Got it right
In
here.
the
We're
in
good
the
to go.
FEMA Region 5 mug. I love it. What is in that mug? Are you a strong coffee drinker, black coffee, cream and sugar?
I'm a very plain coffee drinker. So
Okay.
when it comes down to it, I always order black coffee, usually a blonde roast in the
Okay.
morning to be able to kickstart the morning. So I'll do a little bit of a tinge to that. But then the other day, I was in Annapolis, Maryland. I was celebrating my dad's
Oh
80th
yeah.
birthday. We
Oh,
go to
nice.
this
Happy
like
birthday,
local
Dad.
coffee shop. Yeah, he's great. He's 80. He's like, he was up on a ladder, like,
He's
just
thriving.
unstoppable.
I love it.
Exactly. But we stopped at this coffee shop and it was like a summer blend. And it was a blend between a dark and a light roast. And it
Ooh.
was absolutely fantastic. So I don't know if I'm becoming like one of those coffee drinkers,
Oh, it's
but there's
evolving.
nothing better.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
I think like when you start drinking coffee, a lot of people it's like, loaded up with the cream and sugar and then you get to the point where you're like joking with my first guest, like just inject it in my veins, like just keep it coming black, straight to
Right.
the point. Well, I want to hear all about your journey, of course. I think it's really important to start from the beginning. So let's bring it all the way back. What was your first job?
I go back to it. And really, my first job was not in the crisis or not in the emergency management world.
Yeah.
It was actually a volunteer. I was right out of college, and I was a volunteer coordinator for the Ronald McDonald House here in Chicago. It was actually the
Oh,
second Ronald McDonald. Yeah,
amazing. Amazing.
home away from home for families that have children in the nearby hospital. People that were dealing with their individual crises. And as a volunteer coordinator, one of the things that I loved about it was that this was just every walk of life just wanted to help people that were in somewhat of a need. The cool part about it was this particular house was actually the second Ronald McDonald House in the nation. The first one was in Philly, the second one was
Hmm.
in Chicago. And it was cool because there was a lot of history, but like while there was sometimes sad stories that came out of it, the number of families that I always got really excited about were the ones when they were walking out the door. And the next thing
Yeah.
I'd say is, I never want to see you again, right? Like,
Yeah.
and you think about it, like a home away from home, it felt like a home. You had your
Mm,
bedrooms, you had your open areas, meals every night. But like when I looked down to it and I started looking down the road of emergency management, one of the things I found that was a nice parallel is that when you're dealing with individuals in crisis, there's an approach, there's the compassion, there's the caring, the empathy that comes along with it. And so I was there for about 2 years, and then I started going to get my master's. My my focus had been like, hey, I want to get into something in disaster world. I was a volunteer
yeah.
firefighter when I was 18 years old in high school.
Okay.
But then I got in the Red Cross, and my career just literally took the path where it's taken me to where I am today.
Yeah. So that's kind of what drew you in, it sounds like, to the field of emergency management. You started with the servant's heart, and
Right.
it kind of took you from there. So you've served at all different levels from I think city and county roles, right? To all the way up to FEMA, the national level, Region 5, which we should share. Let's see if I can remember the states for Region 5 off the top of my head. Illinois, Indiana,
Hmm.
Michigan, Minnesota. Is that right? And
Yep,
one more,
you're
two
getting
more.
there.
Oh,
You got two more.
Ohio, Ohio, and
Yes.
Wisconsin.
There you go. Yes.
Yes. All right, I
And the
passed the
traditions,
test.
which I learned when I got
Of
there.
course,
All right,
yeah.
you're good.
You've kind of covered all the layers of the emergency management ecosystem, right? Um, how have those, especially your early experiences, how did that help shape decisions you made, how you lead, kind of everything from, each level all the way up to, to the national level and beyond.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like a lot of people say, like, how do you get to where you were? The first thing I'd
Yeah.
say is I'm the luckiest emergency manager that out there. Because many of the jobs, like they just came along the way. In my early career, I was a director of emergency services at the American Red Cross right after Ronald McDonald House Charities.
Hmm.
And there, what was interesting is I was going down to Southwest Michigan, small, Kalamazoo, Michigan, 70,000 people, give or take. And then you had Kalamazoo County and then all of Southwest Michigan. But we had a lot of fires that were taking place. And I don't know, there was like in my time, I think we had 19 apartment fires in my 2 years I
Wow.
was with the Red Cross.
Yeah.
And I started like learning like through that time that we have to put the focus on the people. The people that are impacted are what matter.
Mm.
And it always stuck with me when we were working with survivors of a fire. Um, the glimmer of hope, the being able to sit there across and hear their story, but then also give them like a sense of let's get you in this like road to recovery, what this looks like.
Yeah.
And I never forgot about that. One of my first major disasters was a small hurricane, Hurricane Dolly, 2000, I think it was like 2008, 2008, I think. And I went down, it was like right in Texas. And it was the people that I met there were from
Mm.
all, like the volunteers were from all over the place. We were all sleeping on cots. This is when Red Cross went to like staff shelters. And it was one of these things of where I reminded myself, like, just be a person that is here to support. And when I walked in the door, someone said, "I know you. You're a director of emergency services. You're not going to volunteer. You're going to be in a supervisor position." And like I realized quickly, like, hey, we have to just we have to be present. Presence is a
Yeah.
mission. And I just kept that my entire career. And then when I went from Red Cross, I moved on to work on the medical side, and I got to work with more volunteers, working with the Medical Reserve Corps on the medical side. This was during H1N1, the first
Oh, yeah.
pandemic. And that was something that was like fascinating to see the medical side and how it works and how it operates. Um, but then I moved to then the emergency management side of the house, and this was like where I wanted to be. So like once there, I was like excited, I was ready to go. But one of the things I like realized in that time frame is that I always had this yearning to do more. And
Mm.
so I was doing plans, I was doing policy planning committee, doing all these things, and I was a paid on call firefighter. So it was like I was filling the cup, but I wanted to do more.
Yeah.
And so I started looking for jobs. I wanted to get back to the city of Chicago. I had no way, no pathway. How do I get there? But I was willing to move. And when you're willing to move, these opportunities will come. Basically took a lateral position when Indianapolis. And that's when, one of my best bosses I ever had, and if it's okay to say it, Kristen Lyon, right?
Of
She was,
course.
uh,
Shout her
she
out.
was,
Yeah.
she was awesome. So she was the deputy director of in Indianapolis. She took a chance on me.
Mm.
Um, just like was like very forward leaning, like focusing on plans, focusing on policies, focusing on procedures, focusing on like how emergency management works. And that like taught me like, I didn't know everything, but I was learning along the way. And she taught me how to really be a good planner overall. And she looked at me, and I remember it like yesterday. She took a job. She moved out to Virginia. And she looked at me and she said, I'm leaving. and you now own your own destiny. And I was like, oh my gosh, we were planning for the Super Bowl. It was right before the Indy 500 in 2000. I think it was, let's see here. It was right before the Indy 500 in 2011. She had done an astronomical amount of the planning for the Super Bowl already. And then all of a sudden, and this is like one of these, the You're It, like
Yeah.
the book You're It. One of the moments that came to me was when the State Fair collapse happened, where it was the Sugarland concert. It was August of
Hmm.
2011, and then we had an incident that was unfortunate. And in that particular time, I started building up relationships. And in building those relationships, when I saw the incident come through on my pager, those still existed at the time, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be the biggest incident in my entire life. Like, okay, head down, let's go. And my kids always make fun of me because I always say, like, head down, mission focused. But it was
Hmm.
like go time. And I remember like when I went into the Emergency Operations Center, then from there, I actually went out to the scene. Um, Presence was that important component, bringing everybody together. It was the tail end of the response. They were moving all the patients out. They were starting to get into the secondary searches. But like it was one of these things of like the in the room like where everything was happening. Like there was just a lot of questions. What happened? When did the severe thunderstorm warning drop? This
Mm.
whole timeline. And like in this component, like we had to like just kind of take this coordinating role. And I was a planning person, so I was like taking this coordinating role, but it was like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna get into a battle rhythm. In 2 hours, we're gonna come back together, we're gonna identify our objectives. And really what we need to do is put together a timeline of what happened. And so sometimes things fall in your lap.
It just
And
happens that
so
way. Yeah.
it does. And then the next thing that fell on my lap was being the planning section chief for the Super Bowl in 2012. And I can tell you that in my career, as I had to make these choices, we also had to be reading the room. We
Mm.
also had to be understanding that our audiences were not just our public safety, the public safety community that we were working with, but it was all the agencies that we were working with. I'll end with this. One of the things that I learned the most in my entire career was both when I was an emergency manager as a county. When you become the emergency manager, the leader, you're looked upon to deal with both politics and also your people, right? Politics and
Hmm.
people, they come into play. And we always have to make sure that we're watching out for the people that we serve, both internally, the staff that work with us, but then also externally, the people that we're serving that we're called upon. And I never forgot about that. And when I had the honor to become the emergency manager in Hamilton County, uh, it's okay. You own the show. You own your destiny, just as Kristen said.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we really focused on was planning. And like I realized quickly, like everybody's like, "Oh, plans only meet first contact." Yes, they do. However, it's the process. It's how we get there.
Hmm.
And so, all my entire career, I've focused on planning as a way to be able to bring people together and to be able to really focus on why, like, not necessarily like, oh, this is important and this is why, but just build those relationships. Because when we're in
Mm.
the room and we can talk on a blue sky day, it's like having coffee, it's like having coffee, right? We're
Sure.
having coffee, we're getting to know each other and getting to trust each other and build that trust. And then when we're in the middle of an incident, it's, oh, no, we okay, let's listen to what they have to say. They've
Yeah.
talked about this. We've dealt with it. The last thing I'll say, and this is when I was with the region, is I learned a lot when I was at the city of Chicago as the deputy director overseeing emergency management. What I learned is that like you have to rely on your staff for
Mm.
everything. Like they're the ones that are going to build. It's like how important the value of your staff are. And the most important thing to do is make sure that we take care of them. But also at the same time is that the relationships are everything. And we have to maintain those relationships. And even if we have a bad day, um, the we can't burn bridges in the emergency management field. And we have to just rise above whatever our personal feelings are to make sure that we're focusing on what matters most, which is people. And
Yeah.
I took that to the region. And that's where I will say like where all of my leadership abilities were able to be like not I don't like the word executed. So leverage all the
Yeah.
leadership like you're fine like you're sitting in the seat and it's okay now I have staff when I walked out the door. I think we were right around 400 staff, which was like the largest the region had ever been. And it was, taking time to listen to learn about what the concerns were, making sure that we were meeting communities where they were, making sure that presence was a mission. I mean, the team knew that I was always focused on being with the people that we serve, which was whether it was the states, the tribal nations, the emergency managers that we were working with. And it always stuck with me. And so, in the end, what I'll say is that if we aren't present, if we're not there, being able to look a person in the face, look them in the eye, have a cup of coffee with them,
Hmm.
how do we build that trust? Because in the end of the day, that's what matters, is building that
Yeah.
trust and then just helping.
Yeah, a couple of things that you said that resonate. One is that, it sounds like, and I can relate to this, your career kind of evolved very organically. And that, you built these relationships and then things kind of, say like fall into your lap, right? But it's really not. It's the relationships that you built. And, of course, proving yourself capable also helps. But those relationships are so important because it's twofold. It helps you both professionally, or personally, but also professionally. It's also those relationships are, like you said, the things that you leverage when you're in a situation, when you have a crisis, like those are the people that you're going to call, and you're going to coordinate with, and you're going to plan with, and you're going to execute with. Like those relationships are just so important on so many levels. And I think it sounds like that's been a common thread through your career. When you look back at, different and you've led response to different disasters, what are some of the common threads that you've seen when it comes to effective leadership?
I live by the principle of a couple of things. Like pandemic, I was at the city of Chicago at the time. Learning about how to plant the seed and help it grow along
Mm,
with was a big thing. So like an effective leadership, one of the things is like making sure that we're doing the right thing at the right time
mm,
for the right cause, right?
yeah,
Like that's like one thing that I really like the thread I pull in the pandemic because in the early parts of the pandemic, like there was a lot of confusion, which is like any disaster.
of
But
course,
it was
yeah.
worldwide, and we didn't
Mm,
know if we were going to get disaster declarations, and we had all the unknowns. And what I learned in that time frame is that so I had the team that was I remember pulling the team together and saying, okay, we're going to have collaborative planning teams, and we're everybody's going to be on a planning team, and we're going to be working through this together, and we're going to get through it together. And so making sure that like people are used to the maximum ability and knowing what the team
mm,
has is a big thing. But the other thing too is not being afraid to be uncomfortable for a little bit. And I remember a particular situation where it was trying to make sure that we were following an organizational approach that was going to be what was best for the city and the communities we were serving. And I remember a conversation I was having where I didn't want, like, I wear my heart on my sleeve, but I just knew that what we were doing was the right thing. But I had to bring people along with me to help them
yeah.
see where I was coming from. And passion gets a hold of me. What ends up happening is like sometimes people are like, this is just Tom being Tom, right? Like, or this is just, sometimes he gets really passionate, whatever. But in the end of the day, like when we have to be persistent, I would say like persistence and perseverance are two things that can get you through. It was doing what was right for the people. That's one. I think the second thing too, though, is that in certain times we don't have like one of the things in effective leadership is we don't need to be the first person to talk in the room. And it's something that I've had to work on my entire career. I still work on it today. But like the one thing that I've found is that if we listen, we're going to open up doors like we might have been closed to at the time, and that's important. And especially when we're dealing with crisis. And then the other thing too that I found is that when we do lean in and we are the leaders at the table, and there's a situation that's hard, the first thing I would always say is we're going to be comfortable being uncomfortable for a minute. We're
Yeah.
not going to agree on everything. I always say that we do better together than we do apart. So if we're fighting against it, we're not going to get what we want. no one ever gets what they want. That's my first thing that I've like learned a long time ago is you never get what you want, regardless of who you are. But
Hmm.
like if we work together and if we like listen to learn from each other and see like where we're trying to like the objective that we're trying to accomplish, we're going to gain so much more ground. It's going to be faster. There's not going to be the
Right.
politics. Like that was one thing that that I really that I leveraged, especially at the region. But also at the same time was being willing to be on your own, like being willing to
Hmm.
take the risk and knowing that the risk that I was going to take, especially at the region, was, could be career ending.
Yeah.
Uh, and the reflection of like, is this the right thing that we're doing? What's best? And that's where, I live by the FEMA core values. I live by the FEMA mission because I think that that's, it's not what I think, it's what I believe. Helping people before, during, and after disasters is the emergency management field,
Yeah.
so like with that, I always said if I get fired for helping people, then I can sleep at night.
Anybody who's listening who doesn't know FEMA's core values, those are compassion, fairness, integrity, and respect. And I love that you said that, Tom, because I feel like those are the core values I've always tried to embody as well. I think they're so important, especially when it comes to emergency management. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like those are like because one of the things I remember, like we were having a hard conversation. This is in the region. I can't remember. You know, I've slept since then, right? Like, but like, I always said if you go back to the mission, the core values, it will always
Hmm.
be the driver of what you
Yeah.
do, and everything. And I hold it true today. And I
Hmm.
wish I knew the core values and the mission. As I was an emergency manager, first off, FEMA's Pub One is a great tool that's out there for anybody to read,
Yep.
to learn about what we do and what the Federal Emergency Management Agency does. But one of the other things I'll say is, some people would say it's a little bit of your downfalls. So I've never said no. There's always a way to.
To get
There
to
are times when
yes.
I've said, yeah, I've said no is nothing but an opportunity. And it might not be the way someone wants it, quote unquote, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be done.
Mm.
And I have always like felt that if we're doing what's best for the people that we're serving, the communities and the agencies that we're engaged with, then that's what's right. And so we don't say no. And if we have to say no, then let's explain the reason why. Transparency is a big thing.
Hmm.
Transparency is something that builds the trust, that builds the
Yeah.
relationships. In leadership, I believe that when we embody those values, there's nothing that we can't accomplish. It's always my buzzwords. There's nothing that we can't accomplish when we do it together,
Yeah.
because we're
No.
all we're all rowing in the right direction, right?
Yeah, that's great. I think just getting to the art of the possible. And I want to shift gears a little bit, but you're at EM1, right, which is at the cutting edge of integrating artificial intelligence or AI into emergency management. So what does that talk to me about what that looks like in practice? What kind of tools or um, policy decisions, what have you? What kind of decisions are being powered by AI right now, and where do you see that going in the future?
Um, one of the things that I'll say is that I was on the phone. Clint Osborne, he's the emergency manager for DC, and one day he's like, "What do you think of AI?" And I'm like, "It's the future. It's the
Hmm.
future." And he's like, "All right, well then run with it." And I'm like, "Oh my God, like what does this mean?" Um, but like when I start thinking about it, like we've been hearing AI for about 2 years now. New engines come along, new opportunities come along. But the really in the end of the day, we have to figure out a way that AI can be operationalized within the emergency management community. People are using it every single day. They're
Hmm.
using it to help write emails. They're using it to help write plans, policies, procedures, exercises. Um, but what I'm finding is that when I go out and I talk to communities, and I went from being an emergency manager in the Midwest to being across this nation, is I've actually embodied what I learned when I was at FEMA, which was this whole listen to learn concept
Mm.
of like, what's your pain points? And the pain points that we hear on a regular basis are, I'm a one person shop. I
Yeah.
have I'm the 911 director. I'm the
Yeah.
emergency manager. I'm also a volunteer firefighter. This servant's heart.
Yep. Very
That's there.
multi-hatted. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And what I'm realizing is that how do we make jobs easier?
Mm.
What can AI do? And emergency management's never been resourced appropriately. It just hasn't. I
Right.
mean, like when I look at it, I saw something like FEMA put something out back in like 1982. And it was like, here's how large your emergency management office should be. And it was amazing because it was actually resourced appropriately, like by numbers wise. And I thought about it, I'm like, no office is resourced appropriately today.
Mm.
And so like we all could use an assistant. We all could use someone that's helping us with writing plans, policies, and procedures.
Hmm.
As an emergency manager, I spend a lot of time out there engaging with communities, but also at the same time, I spend a lot of time sitting behind my computer. And every hour and every minute that we sit behind our community or our computer, we're not in the community building that resilience overall, building that preparedness. And so what AI is doing is it's allowing emergency managers, number one, to have a little bit more of a work-life balance. Emergency managers are 24/7, 365. And I have the utmost respect and just true fan of what emergency managers do at every level. But at the same time, they don't have a work-life balance. And that's
Right.
what worries me. I know that because I've lived it. I've walked those shoes. I've walked I go back to my time in Chicago, and I think that that's when I was truly, literally 7 days a week
Hmm.
on the phone all the time. And this is when my kids were, very young.
Oh, yeah.
And I miss that. And I
Yeah.
know that people are, it's not just emergency management, it's the public safety community, it's that servant heart. But we got to find, where do we find this work-life balance? And that's where AI comes into play. It reads and writes faster than we do. And anybody can go into any component of AI right now, uh, and they can put in a question and they'll get an answer. It might not be 100%. And there's people that are like, AI is going to take over my job. I'll be the first person to say, AI is actually helping you at your job to be able to get
Hmm.
you from behind the desk into the community to be able to
Yeah.
build on those exercises, think outside the box, come up with new and innovative ways. I heard a story about someone who used AI the other day to be able to create a local disaster relief plan. Like where they were actually getting funded at the local level to have a disaster relief fund, but they had to create the policy, they had to create the plan, the procedure, and they used AI for it. And in talking to them, they said it would have never been done otherwise. But like that's where AI comes into play today. When we embrace it, some of the things that we see are challenges are number one, policies are being written.
Hmm.
And what's interesting is that really it's the use policy. It's the cases of like how do we have responsible use of AI is one of
And
the
that's the key.
conversations I
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, like you can't just put something in an engine and or in a bot and let it go. You got to
Right.
read it.
And that's I think that's important too, Tom. I think it's a tool, right? It's not a replacement. And I think that can maybe help make it a little less scary, right? Is if you're using it, like you said, as a tool to make your job easier as opposed to like just replacing a job. It doesn't replace the kind of human oversight piece
Yeah.
there, right?
What was there was a quote I heard, and this
Yeah,
was a couple years ago, where it was like, AI is the tool, humans are the levers and the switches behind the
there you
tool. And
go.
that's exactly what
Right.
I think, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you get that comfort level, and then all of a sudden, like there's, the way the systems are built is how people can get comfortable with it. And again, it's
Hmm.
okay to embracing that it's comfortable to be uncomfortable,
Hmm.
also being able to make people feel a little bit more, oh, so it's going to help me. And once like that trigger point turns where it's helping them, they're unstoppable. They're able to do the things that
Yeah.
they, may not necessarily have been able to do. Being able to read through a 300-page plan in seconds to find an answer is what it can do. And
Yeah.
when seconds and minutes count, that's what matters.
Yeah.
That's where the value of it comes into play.
Yeah, I think that that actually brings up a good point. How do you balance, or how do you see the balance between innovation and like the promise of AI with the very human and often unpredictable nature of disaster response? Where do you see the balance and maybe the value there?
I believe that this AI is going to start providing us faster, faster information at our fingertips.
Hmm.
There's a lot of information that we have an astronomical amount of information at our fingertips to begin with. And how do you sift through what's actionable versus what's just, potentially just noise versus what might actually not be true at all within an incident. So like where are those trends that information to actually give you a better understanding of the size, complexity, and scope of an incident? We're getting there.
Yeah.
It's not 100% there yet. What's not there yet is the ability to like say, write me a disaster relief plan focused on a community of 50,000 people that has flooding as the highest risk. Go. It's not going to be able to do that.
Hmm.
People have heard the term hallucinations. That's definitely the
Hmm.
case.
Yeah.
But what we're going to continue to find is that, like, I heard it best the other day. This is the worst it's ever going to be, right? Like like the more people use it on a regular basis, and it's not just the emergency management field. Everybody's using
Oh,
AI.
sure.
The
Yeah.
educational community, the medical community, public works, they're all using it already. And it's only going to create opportunities down the road. Look, it could end up being a cost savings. When we talk to people about AI, when I talked about people about AI, even years ago, it was buying time that we don't in
Hmm.
an emergency management field, we don't
You
have
don't have
time.
minutes and seconds
Um,
count, right?
yeah, like how fast can you write a checklist that's actually going to be actionable? And I'm an 80 percenter. An 80 percenter is you give me an 80% plan, we can work with that. But sometimes we need courses of action. Like give me three courses of action. And then
Sure.
you give it to a team to get three courses of action. Do something, do nothing, do something drastic, right? But someone has to think there and put that process into play. And that could take hours when we don't have
Hmm.
hours
Hmm.
to focus on it. Or how can we kickstart recovery on a faster basis? Like I think about it. I was in North Carolina when I was with Fema, and I wasn't using a lot of AI stuff at the time, but my chief of staff was.
Hmm.
And I was down there focusing on long-term recovery. And I think about it, I'm like, wow, where I am today, what would have happened if I put in and I said, okay, what are the considerations I should have right now for long-term recovery in the next 6 to 12 months in a mountain community that's been impacted by a disaster?
Right.
I'm just looking for course of action. And actually being able to give people a roadmap, because when you look at someone that's in a crisis, especially a local emergency manager, they're dealing with the crisis. And
Hmm.
they're gonna be in that constant state of response. But if they have that roadmap,
Hmm.
of where to go and what to do. And and that roadmap was based off of situation reports that were created from the disaster that basically gave you the size, complexity, and scope of the incident, that then gave you those initial recovery, like things to do, that then blended
Yeah.
into the long-term recovery, that then added in the hazard mitigation plan that communities have been talking about for years of what they wanted to mitigate. That starts to help you drive of where your community is going to be recovered potentially. And so like that's where the world's going.
Hmm.
And you know, I cannot foresee right now how AI is going to take over decision-making processes. And I don't want it to, because there is a human element
Yeah.
that of until AI can actually take gut intuition and make it something, which there's a chance it could happen someday. Like we still have that, right?
Right.
It's gaining experiences. Certain models train, other models are closed models. But in the end of the day, like what I'll say is that gut intuition and experience go a long way.
There's no replacement for
And
that. Yeah.
I was just about to say the same
Yeah.
thing. You can't take that away. Like no one can take away our years of experience, but what it can do, it can help us get faster. So I'm excited. One of the things
Yeah.
I can say is that like, especially when I think about the emergency managers, AI is a tool that's going to help emergency managers, and they help people. Like the people helping people, that's what matters most. Goes into every facet of what we do: private sector, public sector,
Sure.
nonprofit sector, name it. We don't have enough resources to be able to focus on the communities that are impacted already. We're seeing these disasters happen way too frequently. Uh, we're seeing traditional, non-traditional incidents that take place. And this perpetual state of response, we're not going to get out of it. So if we can't get out of it, let's leverage tools that
That
are
we
going to help
have.
us at
Yeah.
least buy some time and maybe spend some time having a cup of coffee and catching
Yeah,
up.
there you go. Yeah, focus on the things that you can do in the meantime. you talked about a few different things that are interesting. One, hallucinations, um, learning how to prompt. Prompting is really important. The kind of the training and evolution of these different tools. Um, there's a lot to understand in terms of how to use it responsibly.
Mhm.
What advice would you give to someone, I guess, particularly in the emergency management space, who's curious, maybe technology curious, and wants
Sure.
to help shape or better understand where the field is going? What would you recommend to people who are trying to understand these tools better?
So a couple of things that come to mind, like right off the top of my head. The first thing is understand your policy of the community that you work in if you're an emergency
Sure.
manager, and understand like where your guardrails are.
Hmm.
Because we don't want anybody to break policy, we don't want anybody getting in trouble. That's the first thing. But thing two is if that's the case, then build your own sandbox. And if you're dabbling in it, one of the things I'd say is that um, is if your policy says you can't do anything on the work computer or with your work devices, create your own sandbox with public plans, public exercises. Like there's a lot of information that's out there already, and play with it. One
Hmm.
of the things I'll say is that with that are out there today, you can't break it. And I go back to like when I was at City of Chicago when we were working with not an AI program, but a mapping program. And I kept telling the team, you cannot break this, you cannot break it. You're not talking to anything, you're just working within this map. And it's the
Hmm.
same thing with the AI tools that are out there, is that you're not going to be able to learn something unless you try it. And so uh, you know, know the policies and procedures, number one. Number two, create an environment where you can ask the questions and be comfortable knowing that it's responsible and it's a safe situation because the information's out there in a public domain anyway.
Hmm.
But the other thing too is think outside the box.
Yeah.
I've sat there with tools, AI tools, and just literally had a conversation. And it's weird because I'm like having a conversation with myself. But what I have to do is then have like, it's like, how do I system prompt? What do I tell it to do? Let
Yeah,
me think
right.
about this for a minute.
Hmm.
Like, how do I ask it this question? But what I find is like, once we go, sometimes you go down a rabbit hole, which I go down many rabbit holes on a regular basis. So that's not necessarily,
Not
that's not,
unusual.
it's not unusual. I think that's a good way to put it. It's not unusual, number one. And number two, it's like one of these things that sometimes like that's how the answer comes to play. But then
Hmm.
the other thing is like, the more like anything, the more you use it, it gets easier and easier. I heard the thing the other day where it's like if you can have a text conversation, you can use AI. Like that's
Sure.
how easy it is. Where
Hmm.
um, you know, yes, I can say that from the responsible AI component, it's one of these things of you can't just set it and forget it. Like you got to read through it. You got to make sure that the information that you're using is correct.
Yeah.
But also at the same time is having a little bit of trust in the tool. I mean, this has been around for a couple of years now, and right when it was initiated, that was as bad as it was going to be. It's getting better every single day, and having the right people, like having these solution engineers that are working on this behind the scenes. Talk about a world that I never even knew
Imagined.
existed.
Yeah.
Okay, I as manager, bring the right people to the table. Let's solve problems. Let's fix things. I see the programmers and what they're operating on, and my mind literally explodes. It's this whole new world.
Right.
But like these are the people that are behind the scenes that are making sure that the tools that are out there today are working, and that can be trusted, right? Like, it takes 10 years to build trust. It takes 10 seconds to lose it. And
Mm.
I know many people in the AI space right now, they're building that trust,
Yeah.
uh, and with this entire goal of making sure that they can help people, especially build that resilience overall.
If you were to go back to your early career, what advice would you give yourself? What do you know now that you wish you knew then?
Everything's an opportunity. That wasn't the case early career. Chances and opportunities are where I focus on. Two is just, really early career. I listened a lot. I learned a lot. But I really wish I listened to learn more as I advanced my entire career, because the more we listen, the more we learn, and the more we can really build, a world where we can respond to emergencies, recover from them, and be stronger because it happened.
I love that. That's a great place to end it, Tom. Thank you so much for your time today, for joining us. I hope this gets some people interested, especially in where AI is going with emergency management. I think there's a lot of maybe some risk there, but some opportunity, a lot of great opportunity to do things, smarter, better, faster, which is really important, especially in this space. So thank you so much for sharing your story. It was fun, and I
It
hope you
was.
enjoyed it as well.
Thanks for everything that you're doing. This is awesome. And what's most importantly is that you're getting out there in the community what matters most, which is working with people.
Thanks so much, Tom. And that's a wrap on this episode of Careers in Coffee Talk. Big thanks to our guest today for pouring out so many great insights. And hey, thanks to you for hanging out with us. If this episode gave you a little jolt of inspiration or made your day a little bit more brewed and balanced, be sure to click that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming up next. Got a minute? Drop me a 5-star review. It's basically the podcast equivalent of buying me a fancy oat milk latte. Quick disclaimer though, the views expressed in this episode are personal and do not reflect those of any organization. This conversation is not an endorsement of any company, product, or service. It's just real talk over virtual coffee, okay? So until next time, stay curious, stay caffeinated, and keep chasing the career that makes you feel the most alive. Catch you next time.